What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made the mixtape that I released yesterday. This is an electronic music focused mixtape, and I very intentionally set out to have all the songs bleed together. The whole thing somewhat seamlessly flows, and I was able to even do that with some kind of disparate genres and combine them in ways that I think work. So today I want to show you a bunch of the techniques I used to make a continuous mix from the ground up. So first of all, I do want to mention that one thing that really helped was starting out with the intent to make a mixtape. Because I knew that I wanted the songs to flow, I was able to often make a song and then retain one element of that song for the next song and have elements carry through. So starting off with the intention of making a mixtape will mean that you make stuff that has a lot of connective tissue, whether it's similar genres, stuff's in the same key, some of the same sounds get carried through, and that often leads to much smoother flow. But there are also a lot of other techniques that are very useful once you've started on that foundation for making a continuous mix. And using the stuff I'm going to show you today, you can get pretty disparate stuff to still mesh. So whether you're trying to make a mixtape or a DJ mix or some kind of mashup, these tips hopefully will be helpful for you. So to kick things off, let's start off with the intro for the first technique. So first of all, obviously the two songs are in the same key, which definitely helps. And the big thing here is this reverse reverb and this reverb tail. So let me play you each element by itself. Here's the reverb tail. And that just kind of dies down over time. This is just a stock Reaper reverb in this case, just let to ring out as long as it needs to. And then the other element is the first note of the next track. So that drenched in reverb, rendered out, and then reversed. So here's it not reversed. And then if you reverse it, and that very smoothly transitions you into the opening transient of the next track. I really like the effect that this technique has, and you'll see it not just in doing song transitions, but also in a lot of songs where people want to introduce an element, especially a vocal. You'll hear the reverse reverb come in before a vocal kicks in to kind of prime your ears, and it's also just a cool sound. So moving on to the next technique, and this goes back to the idea of connective tissue between songs. This is one way that I did that. Later on in this beat, let me just play it for you. So that little chord swell right here, that's from the next song. And I can play you the opening of this next track. So there's that chord, and this ends up dropping you into kind of a vaporwave type beat. And those big chord elements there are teased a couple of times in little gaps in the previous beat. Same over here. So your ears are kind of primed for that element. Once it comes in, it's not completely new. And I took that even further when I dropped the track down to just drums. And then in effect, sidechained the chords to the kicks, just using some crossfades to duck it. And also in this case, the songs were made separately, not with the intention of being merged. And so I actually didn't make them in the same key. So this is another thing that I used a couple of times across this mixtape to kind of force stuff to merge, is a pitch bend. And I did kind of lean into the whole kind of controlled chaos aspect of electronic music that you've heard in a lot of modern production lately. So stuff like Clarence Clarity, Flume's mixtape Hi, This Is Flume, some of Charlie XCX production. Everything's a bit messy, but in a very intentional way. So I felt like I could get away with this pitch bend. So let me show you what that sounds like. So it's kind of a key change in disguise, and then I used the reverb tail trick again. That way, that rings out into the beginning of the next track. There's even more use of this chord as a transitional element into the next track, and this brings me into the next thing that I did, which is to basically remix the previous track to make a new track. And that takes the form less of a remix and more of it being used as a sample. So to show you what I mean, there's that chord again. Over time I have it go to mono because I made this track on the OP1, which only records in mono. Now we're into the next track, which samples that chords and flips it in kind of a different way. And that builds from there. I mentioned drum overlap briefly. This is another example of that. So here's kind of the big section of that sampled track. And also that same synth sound being carried through once again. And everything's in the same key this time. Now we're into the next song. So that's got both the same synth sound and the drums being kind of isolated. And over time being filtered out and kind of pushed into the background. So I cut low end over time, bring reverb in over time. Another thing you can combine with the drum overlap is the tempo change. So, for example, that's starting to speed up. Still speeding up to kind of future house tempo. And we've dropped you into the next track. Also notice that in here, for a while there's just drums. So that means that this future house track can be in whatever key I want, and it's not gonna sound strange because you're used to not hearing a melodic element, and so once I drop in with a new key, probably won't matter. I do that again over here near the end of this future house track, and in this case there's no tempo change, but once again a very strong drum overlap. And this is a very classic technique, especially for classic house, electro house, progressive house. A lot of these tracks will have kind of drums only intros and outros so that the DJ can very cleanly and easily mix two tracks together. And so this is basically me doing that, but up front. And so here's that. So we've got drums only. Drop out the kick.
Your planet is about to be attacked.
Teasing the new bass line.
You can take my word.
Teasing the new drums.
Darkness.
Got that little vocal to transition you into the drop that kicks in right here. And now every element is different, but it works because over time I've used filtering and dropping in and out of elements to basically switch every element out over time. Same deal over here, although this one's a little more abrupt. In this case, all I did was I took the drums of the previous track, the kind of dark techno track, and fade them out. And at the same time, started with really simple drums, little riser going, and you can hear the hi-hats from the next track starting to fade in. So it's just simple volume stuff, and because the two tracks are tempo matched and fade into each other, it works. And those are the main techniques that I used throughout this. Another example is tracks where these were made very intentionally to connect, so they're at the same tempo and in the same key and have kind of a similar vibe, and so all I had to do to transition them was do the reverse reverb trick coupled with a bit of filtering. So the previous track, cut a bunch of low end, bring in some reverb over time, and then the same reverse reverb trick from earlier to kind of prime your ears for that dunk bass kicking in. And that ended up working pretty cleanly. And then final example of the pitch bend trick. This one was a brute force transition. And some might go, that's a little disorienting and weird, but I think it works. So this beat goes on, and then I wanted a hard switch into kind of a lo-fi hip hop beat that I had made with no regard for whether or not it would fit. And so I ended up having this ring out and then dip in pitch. And I think it works. And then that gets filtered in. And those are the techniques that I used to make this mixtape flow as smoothly as possible. And this project was the result of a kind of a challenge I took on to make a beat every single day for an entire month. So if you'd like to see how that went and why I recommend you try something like that as well, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to hear the full mixtape, you can click or tap down over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video tomorrow. Peace.